Hello, our amazing community again. This is your brother Hubert Naeem Robert, a part of Fli-City Blackout. Again, this is a prelude to the guest we're going to have tonight. I have a young brother here next to me that I'm going to allow him to introduce himself. Some parameters about this little prelim for Mr. Brian and Miss Sharif is going to come on later, dealing with the Flint Public Library. And then the Hall of Fame. You know, Norm Bryan has the Hall of Fame. Robert, a library. And then the Hall of Fame. Unity. We're going to be talking with him a little bit. But before that, again, we always want to acknowledge our community. We are here providing a service for our community for you guys to be a voice. And again, if you guys have any ideas, suggestions, we want this to be a community type of conversation always. So we are always looking for people to come down on Thursday nights. And then I do a show on Saturday, the first and the third Saturday of the month, along with my queen, Satara. And we're just looking to engage the community around what we can do. Not so much rehashing the problems, talking about what is, but really putting some muscle and some work behind getting some things done. We really want to concentrate on making some W's and not some L's. So I got a brother with me right here. I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Hello, Flint. This is George of Grundy II, your favorite veteran, and I'm born, raised, and from Flint, Michigan.
Good, good. I'm glad you are here as a co-host with me today. One thing I'm going to start off. I know some of you may have seen the M Live, or there was some comment made about the lights that are going on downtown Flint, meaning they are spending money to light up the buildings downtown Flint, and they're saying to the public, don't those lights look wonderful and exciting? The Michigan National Bank building is lit up along with the other bank with the ball that be on top. And one point that when I saw this reported, I thought about the many people that have been poisoned by the water, can't pay their water bill, nor can they pay their electric bills. And you have people bragging about the lights on the building. I'm just throwing that out there, not as a topic, but as a topic, I like to ask my brother as a vet, uh, what does he feel? What do you feel about what's going on with Putin? Does that really matter in this country? Um, a lot of times, you know, when we deal with military exercise, it's 1% of the 1% that actually are involved in that, but it takes a tremendous amount of the GNP to spend quite a bit of money on on the war machine. So, what is your feelings about what's going on with Putin and Ukraine?
Well, when it comes to strategy, there are levels to it, and when it comes to the theater of war, there are levels to what those that are in charge would like the public to perceive. So, one of the things that I believe this conflict is going to do globally is standardize what inflation does to our pockets.
Mm.
It creates the idea that things that we have been comfortable with, far as prices, far as whatever it is that we use our monetary gains for, those things are going to go up. Like famous rapper Fat Joe say, yesterday's price is not today's price. So get used to your produce and your meats and your gas being at a certain level. You know, this is that situation that hikes up these prices and they don't come back down from those things. It's the introduction to something that whatever made you comfortable yesterday, get comfortable with today. I think that's one of the major things prior for a collective thought process that this thing is doing. The domino effect of it, from my perspective, which you know, there are levels to it. So it's my perspective on how I've seen the world and how I've experienced it through my military service and through my life service, is that it's going to open doors that we don't want to be open and won't be closed for a long time when it comes to different scrimmages. Like I was talking to a brother earlier, like this process that's going on with what the Russian uh, empire is doing, they don't want people on their borders. Okay, that's fine and well. So they're going about it and saying that we're going to do this and take over what was ours in order to maintain our our sovereignty as who we are. That's their prerogative. How is that going to affect us? China may end up saying that we want Taiwan. You know, we already shut Hong Kong up. Those folks, they thought they had freedoms and liberties that, you know, we were giving them, but now we shut them down. So now we're going to take Taiwan. So what is that going to do? You think those General Motors vehicles and the Hyundais and all the other vehicles that we have that have computer chips are going to be the same price? No, yesterday's price is not today's price. So we're going to hike all that stuff up because we're going to make everything difficult. So the Western society, America specifically, has to pay a higher price and a higher toll because they're not connected to this conglomerate called Europe and Asia. So I think it's in the sense of capitalism, it's just going to push a lot of things up. In the sense of liberties and freedoms, it's going to cause us to rethink and relook how we see ourselves. It, my opinion, depending on how deep this rabbit hole goes and how long this conflict goes, it's going to create a lot of discourse in this country when it comes to ethnic and racial issues. You know, you're going to have a lot of people feeling empowered to create more terror and more issues for uh, communities that are disadvantaged because it's a play of power. It's a play of who's in charge. It's a play of eugenics. It's a play of all these different things that we hide in history and that we don't pay attention to because it's not spoken on every day. And these are things that I've spoken to about other folks. Some just as recent as today, and the others since these conflicts have been going on. But that's my general opinion on that.
Okay, that was a a pretty wide range of opinions. And if we can really be clear, do you think in the history of most conflicts, what you were saying about the monetary part of it, that in the history of conflicts, most of it really revolve around capitalism or who's controlling the wealth in the world?
The control of resources is the main part of humanity. Who controls the wealth controls the people. We can have an we have it's just like our um what is it called uh the college the
Military
folks
college?
that actually vote the what is it
Oh,
called
electoral college.
electoral college. So we vote on in a collective, you know, as a group, and our opinion is noted. It's like, hey, we see what you did, but by elective and by who was put into place to say, hey, this is what it's actually going to be in the overall scheme of it to keep a certain uh, level of control is how things go. They control the resource of the vote. They control the resource. When I say they, I mean the government. I mean the system, the
Mhm,
process.
mhm.
You know, we are all cogs in that process because we uh, voted or we elected that process to be in power. So because of that, those that have the know-how and the ability to get in the seats to sit as elected officials, they have the control on most of the things that we consume or that we digest as people. So yes, capitalism and any government system is controlling all of the resources that we conceive are ours or belong to us or that we want access to. And what we've done as a society, as a human body, is given up a lot of rights and a lot of things that we shouldn't have through time. And you know, like the process of food and things we have, we should all be able to grow our own from everybody on this planet.
Mhm.
There's enough land on this planet for all of us to have our own piece to be able to feed ourselves and to house ourselves. There's enough resources on this planet for us to individually be able to do certain things. I'm of the thought that bartering is more of a equitable process,
Mhm.
because it shows the value of a person not just based on how they can manipulate the words that come out of their mouth, but it's the actual resources that come out of their character and their body and and the things that they do.
Now, when you say that, should a homeless person, a person incarcerated, a mayor, a person that's on the city council, uh, the everyday Joe, should the everyday Joe or a city council member or senator, congressman, homeless person, person incarcerated, I'm giving you a wide range of individuals, should any of them be concerned about what's going on with Putin or even what's going on in their local community?
You always need to be concerned about the macro. Your micro is what you deal with yourself within your circle, but the macro can have a tidal wave effect. What it's like throwing a pebble into a lake. That wave is going to end up hitting the shore, and the intensity of that wave is going to be based on how large that object, that stone, that pebble that you threw into that water. So what happens over there can affect us here in many ways. Like I said, with inflation, with the prices that we pay for things, the markets, based on just the idea of this conflict, has affected the money process all over the globe.
But even when you talk about it, see, I think that's somewhere we get it mixed up because you talk about inflation, and this country prints money, and it is the standard around the world. And so when you think about the value of the dollar and how strong it is, even though China has most of our wealth, most of our debt, um, you got 63 people in the world that has more money than 5.7 billion people on the planet. 63 people have more wealth than 5.7 billion people on this planet. There's only 7 billion people on the planet. So that whole concept about money and the manipulation of money to me is skewed because if you look what happened in '08 and '09, those banks were Fargo and Goldman Sachs and all them, and General Motors was supposed to be was going to fail, and Fannie Mae and all that. And all they did was gave them more money, printed more money, which is a form of socialism. And all those big banks and those CEOs have reaped, I mean, tremendous bonuses. So is it the manipulation of the layman or those people that are politically astute to understand that when we talk about money and inflation, that that's all part of the game. It's like I like call three card Molly that they are playing at a global level.
Uh,
I know that was a full
when it
question.
comes to folks that accumulate uh, in this game or this process or this structure that we have, I look at it like this: don't hate the player, hate the game. If we don't like how these things operate and how people are able to collect these massive amounts of money, then we have to change the way that we put the energy in our votes and the energy in what we want as a collective, as a body of human beings or Americans specifically. It's to me, it's like, how are you going to get upset at the person that they came from a very rigorous background, say, financially impoverished background, racially intense background, and they got an education and they moved out of that environment and now they're living in a location that causes them peace based on the income that they've earned. So a lot of our specifically black elite, they can't come into the community and feel comfortable because the environment is different from what it is that they've earned. So does that make them wrong because they moved into a comfortable environment based on their income, or does that make us all wrong by not encouraging our community to be able to sustain those that do better or are the boule of our community?
Well, I'll go a little further than that. You know, the Negroes that want to be white to move out to, as you just say, Grand Blanc, Grosse
But
Pointe.
let me pause you on that. I don't think everybody wants to be white. We spoke on it earlier. Some folks, yes, some folks are what we consider coons or
Sambo.
Sambos, because I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
gonna say Uncle Tom because Uncle Tom wasn't the bad guy. The
Mm-hmm.
Sambos and the Hambos were the bad guys. But some of those folks aren't that. They just have they accelerated in their ability to play this game.
Well, I'd like to say it like this. Okay, when you say about the game has been designed, and like you say, don't hate the game, hate the player. But
Don't hate the player, hate the game.
when it has been established, and you have a game and a system that they cheat, and they move the goalposts constantly, move and shift it because for us to be here for 500 years, there's been many areas where we said and we thought that we had arrived or we have gained or have been accepted by the white system. So we did everything as you just said, and we supposed to have arrived and supposed to be treated fairly. And just like with President Barack Obama, how he was disrespected. And again, it doesn't mean I don't think it's so much matter that you take your resources as a black successful person, you move out of our community. And what it does is it take the resources out of a black community and put it in whatever community you go to. When actually, like in 1921, or you think about Tulsa, Oklahoma, or Colfax, the Colfax Massacre, Wilmington, 1898, a lot of these different places in this country after 1863 and 1865, we went to certain areas and we built up our communities, and our communities were attacked. So when you talk about those bourgeois Negroes moving out, I do feel something about people moving out as opposed to rebuilding and re-envisioning their community. Because if you look at the north side or Flint, there's no excuse that our community shouldn't look like that. With the resources of people that have made it in Flint to some degree with General Motors, with the plantation system, and all those athletes that have came through here and then went on and done wonderful things throughout the community and out the world, not reinvesting back into these communities because it's all about resources. China people in Chinatown, Jewtown, Koreatown, out there in Houston, Texas, they got a Chinese community out there. I was out there one summer, man. They changed all the signs and everything, and these are Taiwanese, and no police is running down in there, running in their houses, busting up their houses, and raiding their homes or shooting them on the street or killing them because they got order. They have some structure in there. They have some accountability in there. And so when you have a group of people that's saying that we're going to somewhat police ourselves, and many times in our community, we have been so brainwashed and broken and so jealous of one another.
That's where it is right there, the brainwashing. So when you talk about the Tulsas and and communities like that, what happened after Reconstruction, where you have all these freed people that created more wealth uh, than most of the people around them in a shorter amount of time because they had all the skill sets, but then were robbed in these freedmen's banks and things of that nature.
Yes, sir.
There is a mentality that is put on top of this enslaved and beaten person. And we have taken that energy and it's still here in this era and time that we're in. So with Tulsa, my viewpoint on it is like the same energy given is the same energy received, the same energy given. If you want to blow us up, then the next 10 towns over, we're going to destroy everything. We're not just going to stop until you understand that we're not going to be the people that you put a knee on our neck. If you want to make me uncomfortable, then I'm going to make you hate your life because the injustice and the humanity that slavery had brought on those that suffered it, it was no respect given. You're telling me that once the emancipation, which is not freedom, is just a proclamation of something, but it's not freedom, and you're saying there's nothing that you're going to allow people to recoup from all this free labor. then anytime that you put a hand on me and I didn't even take anything from you, I said, just let me walk away, leave me alone, let me do my part, and we can all live side by side, and maybe we'll do some business across the lines. But you're saying that's not even good enough. So you want to come over here and mess with my children, my wife, my church, my lifestyle that has nothing to do with you, that's not bothering you, then I have to destroy everything that you got if you want to destroy everything I got.
Well, when I mean, there's
And I say, and let me say, I believe if that mentality, it would have took a lot of bloodshed and a lot of people would have died. But if that mentality was understood based on how we were taught that as Black folk, we were taught that the only way you get something done is you beat the heck out of somebody or you destroy them, you take away their manhood, then that would have changed the energy. And then you would have people that have communities such as these Hispanic communities, these Asian communities, these Indian communities, because there's a certain, they have people they can go back to. If you mess with a Hispanic community, they have South America to say, hey, we have all these countries that are backing us. If you mess with an Asian community, they have Asia to say, hey, we have all these countries that are supporting and saying you need to stop messing with us, so on and such. Black people don't have a collective to say, hey, leave us alone, stop bothering us. All we have is us. And what people do is they drain our energy. The whole world, and nobody's excluded. The whole world drains Black people's energy and says, hey, we like your music. We like your engineering constructs. We like everything that you do. We just don't like you. So we have to fight continually just to have a relevance of history, just to have a relevance of life, just so a Black man can be respected and not his ideas taken, and then 20, 50 years after he's dead, now you give him some flowers.
well, point by point, really going down to some of the things that you highlighted um, is very unique because I like to frame it like this. We were the first people on the planet, and so all people come from us. I don't care what they look like, the migration over thousands of years, but the first people on the planet was Black. And so saying that, that's almost like a drop the mic. You can just walk away, no argument. You don't even have to argue with anyone else to think differently. Scientists have proven that. Now, when you mention about Tulsa and then even Black people feeling that they can take up arms to protect themselves and really literally go out and take revenge on being mistreated and destroyed in this country called America. Well, you see that basically, even when you think about immigration policies and Hispanic people, a lot of different immigrants come to this country and they align themselves with the white power structure. And so we have been culturally brainwashed to hate ourselves.
But they have an introduction to this country. We just were brought here, and we are the grease for the wheel. We are the things that keeps we were the things that kept everything oiled up. So they have an introduction to this oiled machine. We were just brought here and said, look, you're going to do whatever because we're creating this machine, and you are the blood for the life of this machine.
Well, okay, so even with that concept, if we went back to, like the 1400s, I mean, one thing that should have happened on the continent of Africa with 54 countries and the island of Madagascar, when the Euro Portuguese, when they first landed or tried to land there, as opposed to us being Black people being so inquisitive, they should have killed them and not even attempted to have no relationship with them from day one. That's one mindset because much of the slave trade that was taking place was being done by Arabs a lot of times. And they're doing some real wicked things. A lot of times people don't want to discuss what the Arabs were doing back in that part of history.
And still doing.
But for the sake of our conversation in America, I do believe that all of the insurrections that ever tried to take place in this country, Demar Vassar, Nat Turner, the list goes on, was always spoiled by somebody that looked like me and you that would tell the master what we were planning to do. So I want to get back because I think it's important for our community and people to understand.
Meritorious manumission.
When you have been totally brainwashed and your God is white, your thinking of who you are is based on a construct. What Christianity did was backed by Nicholas V, which gave permission back in the day to enslave, to help part of that global enslavement. Um, and that edict that was handed down through the Portuguese and dealing with the Spaniards. So when you look at it back then, and you talk about us being brought in here with chains, we have always been amazing people, resilient people. And from day one, we knew that enslavement, many of us uh, jumped overboard. Many of us knew this kind of life was not right. But those that have made it to who we call ourselves today as Black people, I think we are doing a disservice to our ancestors, number one. I do believe that uh, why we are continuing to let ourselves, our loved ones being lynched, either through the legislation, either through city council, mayoral, senator, congressman, like Tim Scott. A lot of that behavior is a self-hatred for self. And so when you don't feel good about yourself and love yourself and stand for self as a collective, because America has been designed, like you say, the haves and the have not. Capitalism is the have and the have not. That's the machine. And so, as you said about greasing it, from E.B. Du Bois to you want to talk about that conflict of the talented 10th, and you're dealing with those men and women, Pullman Porters and all, Fannie Lou Hamer, you know, we have always been a progressive people. We've always been a worldly people that have created so much culture and innovation and inventions. And because we have been, I want to say castrated, and we have been totally castrated from the continent, because again, it's like the concept of a tree without roots. A tree without roots can't stand at all. And many of us don't have no
we've been
roots.
standing. We've been
Well,
standing.
many of us don't have any roots. And and when you think about it, we think in the prisms of Eurocentric behavior and attitude. Our concept is materialism. And that wasn't our concept on the continent. It was a collective communal type of consciousness when we were on our continent and being left alone in our different tribes.
Understood. But now that we fast forward to this time that we're in now, what I'm saying is I'm like this. I was in the Marine Corps. I believe in responding according to how you get the reaction. Yes, you have a controlled sense of respect for people, but when you want to cross a line, then I'm gonna let you know. Me personally, I'll let you know that the line is no longer going to get crossed, because I've given you all of my humanity to say, hey, let's talk, let's work it out, let's do all these different things. But now you don't want to reason. You don't want to have the idea of being a human towards me. So now we have to have levels to it. You're one of the elders, so you there's certain structures that you would have to do. You have other people that, and then you have your military branch of it. It has to be people that are willing to sacrifice for the cause. Period, point blank.
And so when you say that, that's a good point, because you have to respect the concept of the KKK and the Proud Boys, because they are clear about their white
They're
supremacy.
willing to sacrifice for what they believe.
They're clear about their white supremacy, and they're backed up by the federal government. It's the same thing with the Panthers or Marcus Garvey or Elijah Muhammad or any. They can call and claim us black extremists, but white people are viewed as patriots. So again, as you've been in a system called the Marines and the Armed Forces, again, and y'all indoctrination, because when you look at it, we are 12 or 13% of the population. We can be wiped out. And many of us, a lot of times, I'll go shoot my technician before I go kill Swanson down there at the sheriff department or Ridgeway White on the real tip, if we want to lay it down like it's supposed to be laid down. Because what my foundation has done to this community from day one, if you want to talk about the real history of Flint
Well,
and
yeah.
how it's been.
Let's put a basis on why those statements would be something that they should or possibly concepts to think on.
Well, again, when you think about self-survival, if any time in the history proves it, anytime black people have tried to take up arms against this country, they have been annihilated. So again, we have a built-in fear. Many black people, again, I use that as an example. I'll go kill him and will bend over backward for a white police officer or a sheriff or a state police officer. I will not fire my weapon. I was in a situation one time, with some guys, and we had weapons, and the detectives tell everybody to lay their guns down. I didn't lay mine down, but all of us, and I thought these guys were some hired guys. I didn't lay mine down, so I know. So again, that go back to psychologically being brainwashed.
Right, understood. But like going back, you actually called out some names. So my thing, and I dealt with different things where I've had to uh where I was been harassed, and I've had to call 911 on the state police before, the Michigan State Police before, and instead of keeping going with the process, what they were trying to say I was wrong at, they disappeared. You know, if somebody was to pull all of the feed on the many times that I've been harassed and hunted down by the police, state police specifically, I'll probably have several lawsuits that I could file, but I just want to be left alone. So, but going back to it, it's like we have a process. So we have these entities in our community that are leaders over us. So, and people have a lot of different emotions about those folks. So, how do we? Because I'm like this. I have an organization, a veterans organization, and instead of taking funds from organizations that I do not align with mentally or socially, I just digress. We struggle how we struggle until we can get to a point to where the community wants to input and help, because I have $100 million dream to bring that kind of money into this community, black, white, and indifferent. But there's a mafia class when it comes to this nonprofit community that when you are not kissing certain rings or you're not a part of certain constructs, they try to do everything in their power to destroy you. And they don't do it directly. It's not like you have these people coming out of their offices that are worth hundreds of millions and billions of dollars coming out, or have these authorities. They put subtle things out there. They make the reality of who you are and what you look like a reality, because what doors were open now they're shut. And because Flint is such a small organism when it comes to how our government is set up, when it comes to the corporate structure, a lot of people cross paths together, and they sit at these tables, and they have been uh, oiled down by all of this money, and so the friends that you had yesterday are now your enemies the next day, and you don't even know it. And you're trying to build. You're not trying to take anything from anybody. You're trying to build on what it is that you've grown up in and create a process. So I'm saying with certain people in place, because it's those are names, but those names are part of a system. So what is it about this system that needs to be broken and adjusted or destroyed and rebuilt? Because this is one of my things when the Flint water crisis was happening real heavy, and certain people want us to just destroy certain systems. I'm saying, so who's going to be the king next then? So if you get rid of this foundation or you get this person out of office, who's going to take the seat? Because all you doing is trying to kick people out of the seat, but somebody's going to slide in. It's just like a cartel. So if you get rid of a certain cartel, guess what? The one that you didn't want to get in the office or be on the streets is going to be in the streets. So how do we adjust and make the conversation where the people can get the most out of it?
Well, I think when you mean about the people, and the only point that I'm making is that, and I'll go back to this, is you said it earlier, respect the game. What the game has been set up, right? So there's rules to this game called the United States. And the United States has been set up intentionally. The Constitution specifically say white landowners, right? And we were excluded because we were enslaved people. So we basically, and even with the Dred Scott decision, there's no law, policy, or ordinance that a white person has to respect when it comes to our lives. We don't have no money because every time from Marcus Garvey to Elijah Muhammad to anybody you mention, even at one time, we created the number system in Chicago, Illinois. The number system, the black number policy system, was the was was the biggest business
You talking
in
about
the
like the
world.
number man?
The number man
Okay.
was the biggest business, black business in the world at one time, and it was started in 1885 in Chicago, Illinois, and even in Flint and a lot of places. We couldn't go to the bank, so a lot of the number men seeded the money for businesses, churches, cleaners. I'm from Chicago, but lived on St. John, and most of those black businesses were started by number men. And so the point I'm only making is Ridgeway, Mott, DuPont, Chevrolet, Pontiac, Standard Oil, Carnegie. Again, it's called, when you think about there being diametrically opposed to any kind of black organized effort to be centered and provide for self, they will never let that happen.
But we can't say they can't control what we do. We
Yep.
control what we do. We just have to fight the right fight. So I understand what you're saying. I understand what history has showed us. I understand what current time, because I'm living it. Again, I was in the process of bringing a lot of commerce to the city, and the powers that be created a lot of barriers.
So stop there. So when you say you were in the process of bringing money to the city,
right,
and then
I got the paperwork and I can prove it.
Some powers to be didn't want that money to come to the city
because I didn't go through
because you don't
kiss
want
they
to.
ring.
Okay, that's my point. So that's my point is.
But for me, if my community, the people that I grew up around, the folks that raised me, would have raised up and said, "Look, we're going to create the opportunity for us to do," then some of that pushback, that little sway hand, hide the hand stuff, couldn't have happened.
I agree with you because even if that could have happened, we don't have real Negroes that's going to stand up and do what you just said, go against the Motts and go against the Fords and go against the white power structure.
I was doing it.
Wait a minute, because so many of them are in bed with the white power structure.
I wasn't.
Let me make my point.
Yes, sir.
So many of us are in bed with the white power structure and don't see no other way around. And then when you couple that with self-hatred, because if you look at the music industry, you look at several industries that, and especially that black people have really, really created and not even have ownership of their own music, not even getting residual of their own hard work. And this is going back in the early 1900s. When you think of Howlin' Wolf and all these other people, they just had talent and they wanted to sing and they wanted to really and wasn't so concerned about the business of finances and how those Jewish and other people tricked them and stole their own writing. They don't even, just like George Clinton, don't even own his own material.
All that happened because of ignorance, right?
Yes.
So right now we're in a technological age. Anybody that's watching this right now, you're watching it on a device, on a laptop, on a phone, on a computer. So if you choose to type in information and find certain things out, you can empower yourself. So now that technology has caught up with the struggles that we deal with, those powers that be don't have the same powers unless they just shut all of the electronics down. And they're not going to do that because they can't, because they got to use them. So yes, those things happen, and yes, they were wrong, but we can correct those things if we so choose to pick up the weapons that we have now and use them correctly, which is this technology.
One thing that I'm not denying any opportunity, technically, or like you say, intellectually, or responsible for us to develop our own, create our own, and encourage for us to build from within. I am not against any of that. I was just speaking on some realities about, when you couple it with history. And even if you look at the cartoons, some of you guys may not be aware of it, but if you remember the Flintstones and the Jetsons and all those different cartoons, you never saw any people of color in those cartoons. And you think about it, the Jetsons was a futuristic cartoon.
Right.
And you never saw us represented. And so what I'm saying about that representation is that, so we can just be clear.
Yes, sir.
Because you're making a good point about
that stuff belong to other folk, though.
You're making a good points about technology. And again, if we were so in concerned about technology, there's so many areas in this country where our communities are technical deserts, meaning we do not have the infrastructure for Wi-Fi or any of those systems in our communities. And a lot of that is done intentionally. Let me make my point.
Yes, sir.
Because I think it's vital when we talk about and have a discussion about access to resources. Because if I got resources, just like you said, I can manipulate the system where you don't get a hold of these resources at all, even though you may have a bright idea. Just like with Garrett Morgan invented the traffic light. Having a bright idea and bringing it to, the world and then making the pattern and then it blow up. The traffic lights is everywhere around the world. Or Henrietta Lacks with the Gila cell, and she never received a dime on it. And her cell have revolutionized the biotech industry. So what I'm saying is, everything you're saying is true, but still we are in a constant psychological deficit because many of us feel, as you just said, you had an opportunity to bring money here and people didn't support you. I think that's big. Because we don't get support from the NAACP in Flint. Where's NAA Urban League? Where have you ever heard of the NAACP here in Flint, Michigan? Did anything with the water, or have they engaged in any level at all? They have not. Even when you deal with the community foundation and DDA and uptown development, all those, they are making sure that they are in bed with whatever the white agenda is.
And I'm not saying you're wrong, but I'm saying I believe there's always three sides to the story. So sometimes people just don't know. Sometimes people are disenfranchised with the mentality because the majority of the mentality is disenfranchised. So when you don't have a collective thought, you go with whatever the strongest base is. So, okay, if this table is not stable, we're going to use another one. But this is the best table because it's got the best wood, but it's missing a leg. So if the NAACP or the Urban League can't stand strong because they don't have the leg that they need, because times have changed, because people's agendas have changed, and then the way that things are written creates a desert of the finances that they used to have, then what can they do?
And I think when you
gotta wrap up. And so what I want to say is that with those deserts, when it comes to technology, there are programs out there. I know a leader in the field that is bringing technology in North Carolina to the technology deserts, and that's just a conversation that has to be had. Because if it's in black and white, you can get access to it. If it's on paper, you can get access to it. And if they try to deny it, you sue whoever it is, if it's the federal government, state government, or whatever, in order to get access to what it is that you have the right to as an American citizen.
Well, and then I'm gonna close out, and then we got a special guest tonight, Sister Sharif, and my beautiful brother, Mr. Norm Bryan from the Hall of Fame, African American Hall of Fame Museum. But one thing in closing out, we gotta really be honest. This system doesn't respect any laws, policy, or procedure when it comes to Black folks. A lot of times we are delusional. We are in delusion that we are included. We are definitely, and they are constantly, since George Floyd was killed, they have killed more Black and brown people since George Floyd had been murdered. And again, we continue to watch the NFL, the NBA, the NCAA, and we're not willing to boycott and stand up and say we are not going to participate in this system anymore. The bottom line, the only real resources we have is our dollar. If we stop cutting off the system or stop engaging in this system so we can be treated respectively, collectively, because that's where our dollar really lies, in our bodies and the work that we are continuing to invest in especially in sports, guys. If we didn't support the Super Bowl, again, it would have been a different conversation. So again,
I agree.
that's another concept of we are being culturally conditioned to hate ourselves,
Program.
and we are not standing up for our brothers and sisters. And again, we want to thank you for this prelude. Again, I'm hoping that we sparked your mind and some of your energy. And we had a program at Unity Church tonight with Black History. Black History is 365. We believe it's every day. And what's going on with critical race theory and a lot of different things is continue trying to erase the relevance and the greatness and the magnitude of Black and brown people in America and the diaspora. So that's something that we cannot let happen, because we all are going to die, but we can choose how we want to live.
Can I say one quick thing?
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing that can separate me from Brother Hubert. Regardless of if we agree on everything or not, I am on his side. I am backing him. I'm backing DeWan. I'm backing my brothers and sisters. So we're going to disagree on a lot of different things or have a different point of opinion. But when it comes to the collective idea of me being, I'm a Black man. I live in a world that doesn't like me. And I understand that. But this is my elder, and my elder and me are going to work it out and get it together. And if he sends me on a mission that I need to take, that's what it is.
All right. Love you.